Shalom. I'm Rabbi Nathan Davidovich, speaking to you on behalf of webyeshiva.org. I'm speaking to you from Efrat, Israel. Looks like part of that cut off. I'll say again. I'm Rabbi Nathan Davidovich, speaking to you from Efrat, Israel, on behalf of webyeshiva.org. I'm going to talk about the Parsha this week. The Parsha this week in Eretz Yisrael is Parsha Chukas. And the last week's Parsha here was Parsha Korach, which is the Parsha Torah reading that is read everywhere else in the world. And I'll mention a little bit about last week's Parsha, Parsha Korach. The title of this little discussion is The Copper Snake and the Lack of Gratitude. This Parsha of Chukas follows the Parsha of Korach. Parsha of Korach, we saw a very unusual punishment for Korach's rebellion. His rebellion was not only against Moses, but against God, disputing what God had said, questioning what God said about who should be the leader of the people and who should be the Kohen Gadol. So what was the unusual punishment? In Korach, he and all his followers and all their belongings were swallowed up as the ground opened up beneath them. We have a very unusual punishment in this Parsha as well. In this Parsha, we have the Bnei Yisrael, children of Israel, complaining about their lack of food and water. Now put it in context. Were they lacking food and water? They had the manna, the man, which basically tasted like anything they wanted it to taste. If they wanted it to taste like a vegetable, it would be a vegetable. If they wanted it to taste like a steak, it would be a steak. Whatever they wanted, it tasted exactly what they wanted. In addition to the food, they had water. So let's see what happens. The Torah starts this particular portion by saying, Vaydaber ha'am be'Elokim u'Moshe, and the people, Jewish people, spoke against God and against Moses, saying, Lama halisanu miMitzrayim lamus b'midbar. Why did you bring us out of Egypt to die here in this wilderness? Ki ein lechem ve'ein mayim. We have no bread, we have no food, we have no water. V'nafshu katsa b'lechem haklokel. And we're tired of this disgusting food that you give us, the manna, even though it tastes like everything that you want. That was their complaint. And what happened? The Torah continues, it says, Vayishlach Hashem ba'omes hanachashim hasurafim v'nashku etzam and so on. The punishment was an unusual punishment. They were bitten by deadly snakes, deadly poisonous snakes. And what was the remedy? The remedy for such a bite and the vaccine to prevent themselves from being bitten was to gaze upon a copper snake that Moses had built, was commanded to build and put on top of a pole. And when they looked at this snake, they were healed. If they didn't look at the snake, they were not healed, they suffered, they died. And if they looked at the snake, they would be prevented. It was like a vaccine, prevented from getting the effects of the snake, being bit by the snake. But if they didn't look at it, they risked being bitten by the snake. Netivot Shalom talks about this and teaches us how we can learn from this Torah portion the importance of gratitude. What does Netivot Shalom say? He says that the snake is the epitome of evil. The snake is the same one who enticed Chava, Eve, in the Garden of Eden to commit a sin. And the punishment of the snake was you will go on your belly all the time. Your food will be in front of you. God was telling the snake, don't bother me. I don't want to hear your voice. I don't want to hear you asking for food. Go and get your food as you crawl along. You'll have everything you want. Just don't bother me with it. And what does a snake do? The Gemara in Tana says, Lasi Lavo, in the future, all the animals will gather together around the snake. And they'll say to the snake, listen, snake, the lion kills somebody for his food. The wolf kills for its food. But you have all the food you want. And what do? You insist on biting people and killing them without any reason and without any pleasure to yourself. So for this reason, the snake is said to be the epitome of evil. And this is the lesson that we learn as Bnei Yisrael, as Jews. We should learn as human beings that we have to recognize the good that God gives us, not like the snake, to have everything you want and not recognize it. The man in the desert, the food in the desert, the water that followed them, they had everything they wanted, but they wanted a desire, which they couldn't get. And the Netivot Shalom points out that the greatest defect that a Jew can do, and this would apply to any human being, is to not be makabel, to not accept the ratzon of Hashem, the will of Hashem, no matter what it is. And then in that category, if you do that, you're like a snake. Now, I want to tell you a story that really, I think, sends this lesson home. The holy Maggid of Mezrich once had a student come up to him and he said, Heilige Rebbe, holy Rabbi, maybe you can help me understand what the Torah says. The Torah tells us, we learn in the Talmud, the Gemara, it says, Mevorchin al hara kishem shemevorchim al hatov. It says you have to thank God and bless God for the evil just as you do for the good. I don't understand that. I can understand, he says, that, okay, whatever God does, you've got to accept it. You live with it. You understand this is the will of God. But how do you thank God for something like that? So the Maggid of Mezrich says, you ask a very good question. But for the answer, you have to go to my disciple, Reb Zusha of Hanipol, and ask him. So the student, the disciple, the person who asked the question, goes to Reb Zusha and knocks on the door. Reb Zusha welcomes him, come into my house. He walks into the house, he takes a look around, and he sees a household full of suffering, full of illness, full of poverty, barely any furniture. It's obvious they barely had any food to eat. And the Zusha asks him to sit down. He says, how can I help you? He says, well, the Mezrich Maggid said you could answer this question. Why does the Torah tell us? Why are we taught in the Talmud that you have to make a blessing over bad just as you would for good? And the Zusha thinks for a moment. He says, that is an amazing question, but I can't give you the answer because I have never had anything bad happen to me. Such is the level of gratitude that Reb Zusha had in the midst of poverty, in the midst of illness, in the midst of things that would make one shudder. He said, I don't understand. I have no way of saying anything but a blessing to God for all the good because I've never had any bad. That's the concept of gratitude. We have to learn to not be a snake and just complain, but to accept. Not just accept, but to be thankful for whatever God gives to us. Because we should understand that we may have our wants, but God knows our needs. Message is gratitude. Nothing is more important than gratitude, being thankful to your Creator for everything that we have. Thank you for listening on behalf of the webyeshiva.org. I wish everybody a wonderful Shabbat, and let us learn this lesson of gratitude, not only as Jews, but as human beings, to be thankful for what we have and to thank God for it, to bless God for it. Shabbat Shalom.